Thanksgiving at my mother's house was always chaotic. Mismatched dishes, burnt pies she refused to admit were burnt, and everyone pretending we were a normal, loving family. I walked in with a small smile, already bracing myself. I had told myself this year would be better, that maybe we'd try to be kind for once. I should have known optimism was a luxury I couldn't afford. My sister, Alina, noticed me first. She rushed over, hugging me with the kind of enthusiasm she only brought out when people were watching. "You look good," she said. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. It never did. And for a moment, I felt a cold prickle run down my spine, like she knew something I didn't. I brushed it off. I shouldn't have. Dinner began the usual way. Everyone talking over each other. Old grudges replaying like background music no one turned off. My mom kept asking if I was eating enough, my uncle kept bragging about things no one cared about, and my sister kept staring at me in a way that made my heartbeat thud louder. There was something in her gaze, like she was waiting for me to slip. If you're still here, welcome to Voice of Jenna, a place where stories aren't just told, they're felt. Here, we dive into real emotions, family drama, quiet heartbreaks, unexpected twists, and the moments that change us. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you what happened next. Halfway through passing the mashed potatoes, she asked, far too casually, "So, how's work?" I froze. That was how it always started, small, innocent questions that somehow turned into interrogations. "It's fine," I said. But my voice felt tight. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing the way she did when she was about to pounce. The air shifted. I felt it. My mistake was pretending I didn't. My phone buzzed on the table, screen lighting up just long enough for her to glimpse the notification from my financial advisor. That's when everything changed. Her expression sharpened like a blade. Her fingers tightened around her fork. And then she smiled, too slow, too knowing. "Oh," she whispered softly. "Now things make sense." A hush fell over the table, like the whole room inhaled at once, but forgot how to exhale. Even the kids stopped laughing. Everyone turned toward me as if on cue, waiting, predicting, assessing. My stomach twisted. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Her next words were even quieter, but each one sliced through the silence. "You've been hiding a lot, haven't you?" I felt every eye on me, full of curiosity, jealousy, expectation. My pulse throbbed in my throat. This wasn't a question. This was a warning. And suddenly I realized, she didn't stumble onto something by accident. She found something. Alina set down her fork gently, leaned back, and gave me a smile that made my blood run cold. "I know about the money." The room spun for a second. My breath caught. She knows. She knows. Before I could ask how, she reached into her bag and pulled something out. And just like that, Thanksgiving was over. And the war had begun. Silence. That was the only thing I heard after Alina's words hit the table like a grenade. Even the clinking of cutlery stopped. My mother blinked rapidly, my dad leaned forward as if he'd misheard, and my cousins froze mid-bite. But my sister, she looked pleased. Almost triumphant. She dangled a thin folder between two fingers. A folder I had never seen before. "This," she said lightly, tapping it, "explains everything." My breath hitched. For a moment, it felt like time stretched, every sound magnified. The rustle of her shirt, the slight scrape of her chair against the floor, the distant hum of the refrigerator. My instincts pulsed with warning. Don't react. Don't show fear. Not yet. I forced a steady voice. "Alina, what is that?" She opened the folder with an exaggerated slowness, letting several printed pages slide out onto the table. Rows of numbers. Account details. Investment summaries. The unmistakable logo of the private firm I'd worked with for years. My heart dropped straight through my stomach. My dad's voice broke the silence, sharp and judgmental. "Is this real?" I didn't answer. My throat was too tight. My mother gasped when she saw the numbers. 15 million? The word million left her mouth like a betrayal. She clasped her chest, staggering back a step. The room tilted. I hated this. I hated my wealth being dragged into the open, twisted into something ugly. I swallowed hard. It's not what you think. But I could already feel the shift around me. Eyes that had been warm for years suddenly turned cold, calculating. Even the cousins who barely remembered my birthday looked at me like I'd been lying to them. And maybe, in their minds, I had. Alina leaned forward, elbows on the table, smirk curling. You've been hiding this from us. All these years. While we struggled. While I struggled. Her voice cracked just enough to sound believable. This whole time, you let us think you were barely getting by. A pang of guilt stabbed me. Guilt I didn't even owe her. I wasn't hiding it, I said quietly. I just didn't want to talk about it. You all know how our family gets around money. My uncle scoffed. So, it's true then. His tone wasn't surprised. It was accusatory, like he had been waiting for a reason to resent me. And then, as if twisting the knife, Alina pushed the final page forward. That's not even the best part, she whispered. It was the inheritance document. My grandparents' final transfer, the one I never told anyone about. The one done privately, quietly, with a single sentence that had stayed with me even years later. You are the only one we trust to use this wisely. My breath faltered. My mother stared at the paper, her lips trembling. Why you? Why didn't they choose both of you? Why not split it? They loved you both. But I could see the truth settling behind her eyes, the truth she didn't want to accept. My grandparents had known. They had seen the favoritism. They had seen how Lena was treated like royalty while I was pushed aside. And they made a decision. A coldness crept into Alina's expression, twisting her features. They didn't give it to me, she said, voice low, controlled. They didn't trust me. Her words trembled with humiliation. And right then something snapped. In her. In the family. In the very air. Because as she stared at me, I realized this wasn't about money. This was about being chosen. For once in my life, I had been chosen. My sister leaned in so close I could feel her breath. You're going to share it, she murmured. Whether you want to or not. A sharp chill shot down my spine. The doorbell rang suddenly, loud, jarring, splitting the tension like a knife. Everyone jumped. Alina's eyes flicked toward the door with irritation. My mom hurried to answer it, muttering something under her breath. But the moment she opened it, her voice faltered. And in stepped someone I never expected to see again, someone holding an envelope with my name on it. And that's when everything truly began to unravel. My mother stood frozen in the doorway, blocking half the hallway like she wasn't sure whether to let the visitor in or slam the door shut. But then she stepped aside. And there he was. Mr. Halstead, my grandparents' attorney. A man I hadn't seen since the reading of their will 13 years ago. The sight of him alone made my knees weaken. His silver hair was thinner now, his posture slightly bent, but his presence? Still sharp enough to slice through the tension choking the room. He held a sealed envelope with my name written in my grandmother's handwriting, looping, elegant, unmistakable. My heart stuttered painfully. Alina's face drained of color. What is he doing here? Mr. Halstead gave her a polite nod, but his gaze centered on me. I'm sorry for the interruption, but this couldn't wait. His voice echoed through the dining room, brushing against the thick silence. Everyone stared. Half-eaten plates, now cold turkey slices, forgotten cranberry sauce. Everything sat untouched, as if time had stopped the moment he stepped in. I managed to breathe out. Why now? He offered a small, knowing smile. Because your grandparents planned for this moment. This exact moment. A hush rippled across the table. Even Alina, who could always talk her way out of anything, said nothing. I didn't reach for the envelope right away. My hands didn't feel like my own. Something in my chest tightened with the familiar fear of being blindsided, because in my family, good news always came wrapped in consequences. But I finally took it. My fingers trembled slightly as I slid it open. Inside was a single page, handwritten, and the first line made my breath hitch. If you're reading this, then the day we predicted has arrived. My throat tightened. My grandmother's voice came alive with every word, warm but firm. Exactly. as I remembered. Tensions will rise. Jealousy will bloom. You will be pressured, cornered, blamed. But do not bend. I swallowed hard. There is something your parents and sister do not know. Something we never told them. Alina stepped closer, clutching the edge of the table. What is she talking about? What else did they hide from us? Mr. Halstead cleared his throat. Perhaps it's better if she finishes reading. I kept going. When we entrusted you with the inheritance, we also entrusted you with something far more important, authority. Legal authority. My mother blinked rapidly. Authority? What authority? We saw what was coming. We prepared for it. They will demand what is not theirs. They will want what they did not earn. My palms were starting to sweat. My heart hammered. Every line felt heavier than the last. And when that moment comes, which it clearly has, you must stand your ground. I lowered the paper. The room pulsed with tension so thick it felt suffocating. Dad finally spoke. What does any of that mean? His voice was low, almost dangerous. Alina crossed her arms, her tone deceptively calm. It means she's been manipulating all of us. I snapped my gaze toward her. You saw the letter. I didn't write it. Doesn't matter, she hissed. You benefited from it. Before I could respond, Mr. Halstead placed a second envelope on the table. A heavier one, stamped with legal seals. This, he said, is the document they kept hidden from everyone except her. Alina lunged for it, but he held it back. It's not yours. Her face darkened, and for the first time that night, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not jealousy. Fear. A deep, gnawing fear that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as secure in the family hierarchy as she'd always believed. She stepped closer to me, her voice trembling with desperation she tried to disguise as rage. If they left you the money, fine. But what else did they leave you? What else did they give you over me? My chest burned as the truth began to settle inside me. This wasn't about wealth. This wasn't about inheritance. This was about identity. About recognition. About the family crown she'd always assumed belonged to her. Mr. Halstead looked at me gently. Are you ready to know the rest? I hesitated. Every instinct screamed that opening that envelope would change everything, not just tonight, but the entire story of our family. But backing out now? Not possible. Not after everything Alina had already exposed. Not after the way everyone was looking at me, waiting, judging, expecting. I reached for it. He let go. The envelope was thick, heavy with consequences. I slid my finger under the seal, slowly, carefully, and just as I pulled out the stack of papers, a loud crash shattered the room. Alina had knocked over a glass, intentionally or not. I couldn't tell, but the sound was piercing, violent, and it made me jump so hard the papers nearly slipped from my hands. My mom gasped. My cousins shrank back. But Alina? She looked straight at me with a warning in her eyes. A silent message. Do not read that. You won't like what you find. Fear prickled up my spine. But I opened the first page anyway. And what I read changed everything I thought I knew about my family and about myself. The words on the first page blurred for a second as my eyes struggled to adjust, not from poor lighting, but from the sudden, full-body shock of what I was reading. A legal declaration, written and signed 13 years ago, by both of my grandparents. I felt my breath catch when I saw the bolded line halfway down the page. We hereby grant our granddaughter full and irrevocable legal control over all family trusts, assets, and properties tied to our estate. Full. Irrevocable. Those two words carried the weight of a mountain. My dad leaned forward, voice tight. Control? Why would they give you control? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to keep reading, even though every line seemed to crack another piece of the silence in the room. We do this to protect her from manipulation, coercion, and pressure we foresee from those who may prioritize personal gain over fairness. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom inhaled sharply. Alina let out a low, bitter laugh. They wrote that about us? Seriously? Her voice shook, but she tried to hide it under a layer of sarcasm. It didn't work. Not tonight. She reached out and snatched the second page before I could react. Her eyes darted across the lines, and her face drained even further. I asked quietly, "What does it say?" She tossed the paper onto the table. "Why don't you read it? Since everything apparently belongs to you now." I picked it up. Additionally, we instruct our attorney to reveal this document only if our granddaughter's assets become threatened or demands are made of her that are unreasonable, unfair, or rooted in entitlement. I froze. This moment, this dinner, this confrontation, it had been predicted, planned for, prepared for. And suddenly I felt a strange mix of sadness and gratitude well up in me. Sadness for the family I'd always wanted but never truly had, gratitude for the grandparents who saw through everything before I could. But before I could fully process any of that, Alina stepped toward me, pointing a trembling finger inches from my face. "Give me one good reason why you deserve all of this. Why them, your own grandparents, trusted you over me." Her voice cracked at the last word, and that crack broke something inside me. I stood slowly, feeling every eye follow me. "Because," I said softly, "I never asked them for anything." Alina scoffed. "Oh, please." I cut her off. "I didn't compete. I didn't demand. I didn't expect them to bail me out of every mistake I made." Dad slammed his palm on the table. "Enough. That's enough." But it was too late. The dam had already burst. I turned toward him. "You asked them for loans they never got back. You pushed them to change the will years before they died. You tried to make me give up my share back then too, remember that?" He looked away. Mom whispered, "Not tonight, please." But tonight was exactly the night. It had been building for years. Alina's throat bobbed as she swallowed. "So what? That doesn't mean they should have handed you everything." "It means," I said quietly, "that they trusted me to keep things safe, to keep things fair, to keep things from being abused." The air shifted, thickened, crackled with emotions too tangled to name. Alina exhaled shakily and began pacing, fingers pressing against her temples, like she was trying to stop her thoughts from spilling out. "You don't get it," she muttered. "You really don't." "Then explain it," I said. She stopped, raised her head, and for the first time all night she looked genuinely vulnerable. "They were supposed to help me." "With what?" Her eyes glistened. "With everything." She sank into a chair as if her legs had finally given out. All her anger, all her entitlement, it melted into something raw and quiet and unsettling. "I always thought," she whispered, "that they loved you more." My breath caught. This, I wasn't expecting. "They didn't," I said softly. "Yes, they did." Her voice wavered. "You were the golden one, the obedient one, the quiet one, the one who never made a mess, the one they were proud of. And I." She swallowed again, harder this time. "I was the disappointment." I felt something shift inside me. Not pity, not forgiveness, just understanding. But before I could speak, another voice broke through the tension. My aunt stepped into the room quietly from the hallway. She must have been listening the whole time. Her voice was gentle but firm. "That isn't what happened, Alina." Alina looked up. "Then what happened?" "They loved you both. But they trusted her more because you never learned the difference between need and want." Alina's face twisted. And then my aunt added something that made the room tilt. "And they gave her power for a reason because one day she would need it." Alina blinked, confused. "Need it for what?" My aunt opened her mouth, closed it, then said carefully, "For what's coming next." A chill broke across my arms. "What's coming next?" I asked. She hesitated. Once. Then again. Then she whispered, "You're not the only one they left something for." Alina's head snapped up. "What does that mean?" My aunt stepped closer to the table, looking at the legal papers like they contained landmines. "They left something else. Something big. Something we weren't supposed to open until now." A strange pressure filled my ears, like the room was shrinking around us. "And it doesn't just involve you," she added, looking directly at me. "It involves all of us." My pulse quickened. What is it? She reached into her coat pocket and slowly pulled out a small, metal key. A key I recognized immediately. My grandmother's safety deposit box key. Before anyone could move or breathe or ask another question, she said. And inside that box, there's something that will change this family forever. The key glinted under the dining room light, tiny and harmless looking, but carrying a weight that felt almost dangerous. The kind of weight you feel behind your ribs, spreading slow and cold like something is about to crack open. My aunt didn't move. Nobody did. The air had gone painfully still, as if the whole house was holding its breath. Alina was the first to speak. A safety deposit box? Since when did Grandma even have one? My aunt inhaled slowly, letting the question sit for a moment before answering. Since the year she started getting sick. That stunned me for a second. Why didn't she tell anyone? She told one person, my aunt said softly. Then she looked at me. A strange pressure fluttered in my chest. Me? Yes. But you were 15. She didn't want to burden you with it yet. 15. Back when I had no idea the adults around me were already playing silent wars behind polite smiles. Dad stepped forward with a strained voice. What exactly is in that box? My aunt's eyes flickered to him, and something cold crossed her face. Something she didn't trust you with. I watched Dad's jaw tighten. Not in anger this time, but in something closer to guilt or old bitterness he didn't want exposed. Mom reached for his arm, but he gently pulled away, eyes fixed on the key. My aunt cleared her throat and spoke slowly. Your grandmother asked me to hold on to this until the day this family erupted. Alina blinked rapidly. Erupted? What does that even mean? You're living it, my aunt replied. The silence that followed was uncomfortable, prickly, almost electric. Like we were all standing too close to a truth none of us were ready for. I found myself whispering, what else did she say? My aunt's voice softened. She said there would be a moment when everything felt unfair and twisted, when trust would be tested, when someone would try to take advantage of you. Alina shifted uncomfortably. And that, my aunt continued, is when this key would matter. My chest tightened. Everything in me resisted the idea that Grandma, sweet, gentle, always baking cookies Grandma, had foreseen tonight. But she had. She saw the cracks long before I learned how deep they ran. Alina crossed her arms. So, what's the big secret then? Another will? Another pot of money she hid? My aunt shook her head. It's not money. That caught all of us off guard. Dad frowned. Then what? She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. It's evidence. Alina stiffened. Evidence of what? My aunt looked toward the window instead of at any of us, as though saying it out loud might draw something dangerous closer. Evidence of who actually caused your grandfather's financial collapse. The room froze. Even the clock on the wall felt louder. Dad's expression flickered, something dark crossing his face, so quickly it almost disappeared. But I saw it. And so did my aunt. Don't, he warned quietly. Don't start that. She turned toward him, not intimidated in the slightest. You know what she found, and you know why she hid it. Mom stood up suddenly, chair scraping loudly. Enough. We are not doing this tonight. My aunt's voice lowered. Tonight is exactly when it needs to happen. My heart pounded. What collapse? What evidence? Dad rubbed a hand across his face. This is nonsense. Your grandfather made bad investments. That's all. But there was something hollow in the way he said it, a rehearsed line said too many times. Alina stared at him. Dad, why do you look like that? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned away, shoulders rising and falling like he was wrestling something inside himself. Something heavy. Something old. My aunt took a small step toward the table. The box contains proof that the collapse wasn't an accident. Someone. Dad spun around sharply. Enough. The force of his voice made Alina flinch. Even I felt my breath catch. My aunt didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. If you have nothing to hide, why are you afraid of what's in the box? That landed deep. Too deep. Dad didn't move. Didn't blink. didn't breathe, it seemed. Alina whispered, "Dad, what's going on?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. And then, suddenly, painfully, Mom spoke. "Your father didn't cause it," Mom said quietly. "But he knew who did." Everyone froze. My stomach dropped. What? Mom closed her eyes as though she had just ripped open a wound she'd kept stitched shut for years. He found out too late. And he never said anything because he thought the truth would destroy the family. Alina shook her head. Destroy the family? What truth could possibly? Mom's voice cracked. The truth that the person responsible wasn't an outsider. The air in the room thickened so much it felt like fog. Then who? I whispered. She opened her eyes, and for the first time, she looked at me as though she was afraid of me asking. Her voice was barely a whisper. It was someone Grandma trusted. Someone we all trusted. A shiver danced along my spine. Dad whispered, almost to himself, "We should have told you earlier." My aunt looked at him sharply. "You had your chance. Now she'll learn the truth herself." She set the key on the table with a quiet metallic tap, a sound that echoed louder than any shout. "In that box," she said softly, "is the real story. The one your grandparents couldn't bear to expose while they were alive." I stared at the key, feeling something shift inside me. A slow, steady dread. Alina whispered, "Are we really doing this?" My aunt nodded. "We're doing it tomorrow. First thing in the morning." Dad covered his face with both hands. Mom placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. And I couldn't look away from the key. Because deep down, I knew something. Something life-changing. Something painful. Something irreversible. Was waiting behind that steel box door. And the worst part? I had a sinking feeling I already knew who was responsible. But I prayed I was wrong. Because if I wasn't, this family was about to unravel in a way none of us were ready for. I woke before dawn. The house silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant crow of a rooster somewhere beyond the hedges. My hand hovered over the coffee maker, but I couldn't bring myself to pour a cup. My stomach twisted with unease. Last night's revelations had settled over me like a storm cloud, thick and suffocating, and I felt the first tremors of dread in my chest. Alina was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. Her eyes were red, and she barely looked up as I entered. "I couldn't sleep," she muttered, scrolling through emails like a lifeline. "Did you hear anything Dad said last night?" I shook my head. He barely spoke. "Mom, too, everyone's hiding pieces of something. And that key, it's worse than I thought." She looked at me sharply. "You think it's going to ruin everything?" I shrugged, but inside I felt a cold certainty. "I don't know. But I know it's going to change everything we thought we knew about this family." Mom appeared in the doorway, her robe tied loosely around her. Her eyes were tired but alert. "I've been thinking," she said softly, almost to herself. "We have to face this head-on. If we leave it alone, it will control us." I felt the weight of her words. She was right. The key wasn't just metal, it was a symbol, a threat, and a test. And if I hesitated, someone else might seize control. By mid-morning, we gathered in the living room, the key sitting between us like a challenge. Dad's hands were shaking slightly as he reached for it, then recoiled. "I shouldn't even be here," he muttered. "I shouldn't be a part of this." Mom's eyes narrowed. "You're part of this whether you like it or not. That's the difference between running from the truth and facing it." Alina leaned forward, biting her lip. "We open it, and we find out what Grandma wanted us to see. That's it." I nodded. "We open it. Together." The lock clicked under the small key, the metallic sound echoing far louder than it should. And when the box opened, I felt like I'd been hit by a wave. Inside were documents, old photographs, and letters stacked neatly. The handwriting was my grandmother's, precise, flowing, deliberate. I picked up the first letter. The envelope was brittle. I unfolded it, my fingers trembling. "Dear Elena," it began, "if you are reading this, it means the time has come for truths to be revealed that I could not speak aloud. Some of these truths will hurt. Some will shock. But they are yours to know. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just about money. Not at all. Alina leaned over my shoulder. What is it?
Tell me.
I swallowed. It's everything. About Dad, about Mom, about who Grandma really trusted. Dad's face tightened. You shouldn't. I looked at him, fury and disbelief coiling inside me. You? You shouldn't? You've been hiding this from me my whole life. Mom's hand touched mine gently. Elena, calm down. Let's just read it first. But as I unfolded the next page, my world twisted. My hands shook. The letter revealed something I could never have imagined. Dad had known about the person responsible for the family's old collapse. He had deliberately concealed it. All those years, every carefully curated story, every excuse, lies. Alina gasped. You knew, she said, voice breaking. Dad's eyes filled with shame. I thought I was protecting you. I thought it would be easier if you didn't know. I shook my head, my throat tight. Easier? Do you have any idea how much this changes everything? How much trust you destroyed? Mom's face was pale, but she said nothing. She only watched. I reached for the photographs. One in particular made my blood run cold. It was a picture of my father standing beside the person who had orchestrated the family's financial collapse years ago. And there I was as a child, smiling in front of them, completely oblivious to the betrayal surrounding me. I couldn't breathe. My hands were slick with sweat, heart hammering. Every memory of our family dinners, our holidays, all those times I trusted Dad implicitly, every single one of them suddenly felt like a lie. Alina touched my arm. Elena, what are we going to do? I looked at the letters, the photographs, the carefully stacked evidence. We're going to confront them. All of them. And we're not leaving until the truth is out. Dad's voice cracked. You don't understand what you're saying. If this gets out. I snapped. It's already out. I know. And I will make sure everyone knows. A deep silence fell, broken only by the sound of the old grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Each tick sounded like the countdown to something dangerous. Something irreversible. Alina swallowed. Are you sure? This could ruin everything. I nodded, even as fear tightened its grip around my chest. I've never been more sure. It's time we stop hiding from the past and face it head-on. Tonight, we start taking control. Mom took a shaky breath. Then we do it together. But as I looked at Dad's face, I realized this wasn't going to be easy. Betrayal cuts deeper than any wound you can see, and trust, once broken, isn't given freely again. And as the clock struck noon, I had a sinking feeling. Once this truth came out, there would be no turning back. Because the people we trusted the most were capable of the greatest betrayals. And they were still in the house with us. I sank into the armchair by the living room window, the late afternoon sun casting long, sharp shadows across the floor. The house was quiet now, eerily quiet, like it was holding its breath after the storm of revelations. I could still feel the weight of the letters, the photographs, the truth my parents had hidden from me for decades. My chest ached with a mix of anger, disbelief, and something else, something harder to name, a simmering determination that refused to be ignored. Alina hovered nearby, fidgeting with her phone, but not looking at it. She could sense my tension, the silent storm brewing inside me. Elena, what now? She asked softly, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile calm. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let my mind drift back to the mornings before everything fell apart. The laughter over breakfast, Dad's careful instructions on how to set the table, Mom's gentle teasing about my stubbornness. All those moments felt like another lifetime. And yet, they were proof of what had been lost, not just money, not just secrets, but trust, family bonds, the illusion of safety I had clung to for 40 years. I clenched my fists, the old familiar frustration coiling inside me. We can't let this go, I said finally, my voice low but firm. Not now, not ever. They need to understand that hiding the truth doesn't protect anyone. It only destroys everything they claim to care about. Alina nodded, her eyes wide but resolute. So, confrontation? You mean, tonight? I hesitated. The thought of facing my parents, seeing their faces twisted in fear or anger, sent a shiver down my spine. But beneath that fear, there was a flicker of something stronger, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Yes, I said. Tonight. But we need a plan. We can't just go in blind, or they'll manipulate us, twist the story, and we'll lose control all over again. I stood and began pacing, the wooden floor creaking beneath my steps. I needed to organize everything: the letters, the photographs, the evidence of Dad's long concealment. Every detail mattered. Every fact had to be presented in a way that couldn't be ignored or twisted. My mind raced with strategies, with questions I hadn't dared ask myself before. How far would they go to protect their version of the truth? Who else knew, and who might take their side? And most importantly, what did I want really when the dust settled? Mom appeared in the hallway, her expression unreadable, hands clasped tightly together. "Elena, I know you're upset," she said cautiously, "but please, don't let anger guide you. You'll regret it." I turned to face her, my eyes burning with a mixture of pain and resolve. Regret? I've already regretted trusting blindly. I've already regretted not seeing the signs. No, Mom, I won't regret taking control of this for once. And neither will Elena. Elena moved closer, her presence a quiet comfort. I felt the weight of responsibility shift, not entirely on me anymore. We were a team, and the thought steadied me. But the truth of my parents' betrayal still lingered, a shadow that would not dissipate easily. I sank back into the chair, opening one of the letters again. My grandmother's words jumped off the page, each line a mixture of warning and hope. She had anticipated everything: the greed, the manipulation, the potential for family division. And she had left me a guide, a way to reclaim what was mine, not just in wealth, but in dignity, in respect, in truth. I closed my eyes and let my thoughts drift to the confrontation ahead. It wouldn't just be about money. It would be about integrity, about standing up for myself and my daughter, about finally holding my parents accountable for the choices they had made. The fear that had gripped me since childhood, the fear of disappointing them, the fear of being cast aside, was still there, but it had shifted. It was no longer paralysis. It was fuel. Elena touched my hand lightly. "Elena, we can do this. Together." I nodded, feeling a strange sense of calm settle over me. The house no longer felt like a trap filled with secrets. It was a stage, a battlefield, and tonight we would take back the ground that had been stolen from us. I stood and moved to the window, watching the last light of day fade behind the trees. Shadows lengthened across the yard, and a cool breeze whispered through the leaves. My parents were downstairs, unaware of how much I already knew, unaware of the strategy forming in my mind, the steps I would take, the questions I would ask, the truths I would reveal. I allowed myself a small, almost imperceptible smile. For the first time in years, I felt powerful, not in a loud, destructive way, but in a quiet, unshakable way. I was ready to confront the lies, the betrayal, the greed. And I would do it on my terms. The house felt alive again, charged with anticipation. Every creak, every shadow, every distant sound seemed to echo the possibilities of what tonight could bring. And as I glanced at Elena, I realized that this wasn't just a confrontation about money. It was a reckoning, a chance to reclaim our family, not just in wealth, but in truth, in trust, and in the kind of courage that could not be taken from us. And in that moment, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: nothing would ever be the same again. The house smelled faintly of roasted turkey and pumpkin spice, a cruel reminder of normalcy, while the storm of truth was about to hit. Elena sat at the dining room table, papers spread around her like a battlefield map, each one holding a piece of the story her parents had tried so desperately to rewrite. Elena perched nearby, scanning the room with a tense energy that mirrored her own. "Are you sure about this?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Elena didn't look up. Her hands moved deliberately, arranging letters, photos, bank statements, and emails into neat piles. "We don't have a choice," she said firmly. "They tried to take what wasn't theirs. Tonight, we make it impossible for them to deny it." Her jaw tightened. The fire behind her eyes was something even Alina hadn't seen in years. Calm, controlled, but unyielding. The plan had to be precise. Every question she would ask, every point she would raise, had to be backed by undeniable proof. Her parents were cunning, experienced in twisting narratives and evading accountability, but she had something they hadn't anticipated: foresight, patience, and the clarity born of betrayal. She picked up a letter from her grandmother, the handwriting faded, but the message unmistakable. "Trust your instincts. They will underestimate you because they always have. Let truth be your weapon." Elena traced the words with her finger, feeling the weight of generations behind her. Her grandmother had seen the cracks in this family long before she had, and now the time had come to act. Elena shifted, breaking the quiet. "So, you'll lay it all out, letters, statements, everything, and see how they react?" "Yes," Elena replied, finally meeting her sister's gaze. "We'll start calmly. I'll ask questions, give them a chance to explain themselves. Watch their reactions. But if they lie, if they try to manipulate, then I show them the proof. Step by step, we take control of the narrative." She paused, feeling the familiar ache of anger coiling in her chest. It wasn't just about the money. It was about trust, about respect, about proving to herself and her daughter that deception and favoritism would not dictate their lives. She wouldn't be pushed aside or silenced. Not this time. Alina nodded, inspired by the resolve in her sister's voice. "I'll support you," she said. "Every step." Elena gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. The reassurance mattered more than words could convey. They were not alone in this fight. They had each other, and that bond was something her parents could never touch. She stood, pacing the room as her mind raced through contingencies. What if Dad denied the transfers? What if Mom tried to appeal to sympathy, tried to make it seem like Elena was overreacting? Every scenario had to be accounted for. Every piece of evidence had to be at the ready. The clock ticked louder with each passing minute, a steady drumbeat counting down to the moment when truths long buried would be unearthed. Elena could feel her heart thrumming in sync with it, a mix of fear, anticipation, and the growing thrill of empowerment. Finally, she pulled the stack of documents toward her, smoothing each one carefully. "Tonight," she murmured to herself, "they see everything. There's no turning back." The words felt like a promise, not just to herself, but to the family she wanted to protect, the one built on honesty, not favoritism or greed. She glanced at Alina one last time, and the nod they exchanged carried the weight of silent understanding. Tonight was not just a confrontation. It was a declaration. Elena was reclaiming her place, her dignity, her voice, and no one could take that from her. A sudden sound from the hallway made her stiffen. Her parents were nearby, unaware of the storm about to break. She took a deep breath, feeling the resolve solidify in her chest. Calm, precise, prepared. That would be her armor. That would be her strength. Elena walked to the window, looking out at the last traces of daylight fading into twilight. Shadows stretched across the yard, but she didn't flinch. Each shadow felt like a challenge, a test of how far she was willing to go to protect what was rightfully hers. She whispered to herself, almost inaudibly, "I will not let fear guide me. I will not let them control me. I will stand, and they will see that their attempts to manipulate me have failed." Alina watched her sister, sensing the calm fury beneath Elena's composed exterior. "They won't know what hit them," she said quietly. "No," Elena replied, her voice steady and unwavering. "They won't. Not until it's too late." The room fell silent again, but this silence was different, charged, expectant, alive. The first moves had been planned, the strategy mapped, the pieces set. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, Elena would confront the family, not as the quiet, obedient daughter they had known, but as a woman who had finally claimed her power, her voice, and her truth. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a quiet, thrilling thought took root. They had underestimated her, and that would be their biggest mistake. Elena stood at the entrance of the family living room, her hands clutching the stack of documents like a shield. The chandelier above cast fractured light across the polished hardwood floor, catching on the gold accents of her mother's jewelry and the sharp creases of her father's tailored suit. The room smelled faintly of after-dinner coffee and the lingering tang of tension, thick enough to taste. Her parents looked up simultaneously, smiles fixed but eyes wary. "Elena, what is this about?" her mother asked, voice smooth, practiced, but her fingers betrayed a slight tremor as they fidgeted with a silver napkin ring. Elena didn't answer immediately. She let the silence hang, letting it stretch until it became uncomfortable. The air felt electric, charged with anticipation. "It's about what's mine, and what you tried to take from me," she said finally, her voice calm but firm. Her father's brow furrowed, and he leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms as if to shield himself. "I don't know what you're implying," he said, though the edge in his tone betrayed the lie. Elena moved forward, placing the first document on the table with deliberate force, the snap of paper echoing like a gavel. "This is the transfer of my inheritance. You tried to reroute it, favoring Marissa over me. Why?" Her eyes locked on her mother's, piercing, unyielding. Her mother's lips pressed into a thin line, her posture stiffening. "We only thought." "You thought what?" Elena cut in, her voice rising but still controlled. "That favoritism could override fairness? That your choices could define my life and silence me?" She leaned closer, the weight of years of resentment finally finding its voice. "You underestimated me. And that's why I have every letter, every statement, every record. And it's all here." Her father's hands shook slightly as he reached for a document, but Elena pulled it back just out of reach. "Don't. You don't get to touch it until I say," she said, her tone absolute. "Tonight, you will answer." Marissa, seated quietly in the corner, looked between them with wide eyes, sensing the storm but not yet fully understanding its force. "Elena, maybe we can," she began, but Elena raised a hand, silencing her. "No. This isn't about negotiation. This is about accountability." Elena gestured toward the documents, each one a testament to years of careful observation, notes, and proof of her parents' actions. "You hid behind traditions, behind appearances, thinking it would protect you. But it only revealed your true intentions." Her mother's eyes flitted nervously between the papers, then back to Elena. "You're being dramatic," she said, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her calm facade. Elena shook her head slowly, letting the weight of the moment sink in. "No. I'm being honest. Honest with myself, and with all of you. You can no longer dictate the narrative. Every choice you made to manipulate or control me will be confronted tonight. And it will be undeniable." Her father finally spoke, voice low and tight. "And what if you're wrong? What if this isn't as clear-cut as you think?" Elena's gaze sharpened, unwavering. "I've prepared for that. And that's why I'm not afraid. I know it's true, and tonight, so will everyone else." She reached for the next set of documents, sliding them across the table toward her mother. "The emails, the bank statements, the notarized letters from the attorneys, you can try to deny them, but the proof doesn't lie." The room fell silent. Each rustle of paper, each measured breath felt amplified. Marissa swallowed hard, sensing the shift in power, while her parents' confidence visibly wavered. Elena's voice softened slightly, just enough to cut through the tension like a blade. "I didn't want it to come to this. I tried to trust, to hope that fairness would prevail. But you forced my hand." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over them. "And now, you will see that deception has consequences." Her mother's fingers twitched against the table, while her father's jaw clenched. Elena's eyes swept over them, steady, resolute. "You can apologize, you can explain, but you cannot erase what has been done. The time for hiding is over. And it starts tonight." The tension was palpable, nearly suffocating. Every heartbeat, every inhale, seemed to echo through the room. Elena leaned back, letting her composure radiate like armor. She could feel the gravity of the moment, the shift in power as truth moved like a tide against their carefully constructed walls. A sudden sharp knock on the door startled them all, echoing like a gunshot in the quiet room. Everyone froze. Marissa's face drained of color. Elena's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with anticipation. She rose slowly, every movement deliberate, her eyes never leaving her parents. "It seems," she said, voice calm yet carrying an edge, "there's one more piece of the puzzle arriving tonight." The knock came again, urgent. The room felt smaller, every shadow suddenly darker. Her parents exchanged a glance, unspoken panic flickering in their eyes. Elena felt a surge of satisfaction. The moment of reckoning was about to deepen, the final layers of truth about to unfold. She glanced at Marissa, who now seemed more uncertain, more aware of how fragile their position was. "Stay," Elena said softly. "Watch. Listen. Learn." The doorknob rattled. The tension reached its peak. Outside, the hallway light flickered as if signaling the storm that had been building all evening. Elena took a deep breath, savoring the calm before the full confrontation, knowing that once the door opened, nothing would ever be the same. And at that exact moment, she realized the final revelation wasn't just in her hands. It was about to walk through that door. The door creaked open, slow and deliberate, and Elena's gaze sharpened instantly. Standing there was her grandparents, faces calm yet resolute, holding an envelope that seemed to hum with the weight of truth. The room, already thick with tension, seemed to tighten around them, every tick of the antique clock echoing like a drumbeat counting down the inevitable. "Grandma, Grandpa?" Elena's voice trembled slightly, but there was a steel underneath it now, forged from weeks of preparation and unyielding determination. Her grandmother stepped forward, eyes warm but unwavering. "Elena, it's time you knew the full story," she said, handing the envelope across the table. "Everything your parents tried to manipulate, every favor they tried to force, has been recorded here. And it changes everything." Her grandfather nodded, folding his hands in front of him. This inheritance was never about favoritism. It was always about responsibility and about recognizing the person most ready to honor it. And that person is you. Elena's chest tightened. The stack of documents in front of her parents suddenly felt heavier, their earlier arrogance melting into shock. Her mother opened her mouth, perhaps to protest, but the words caught in her throat. Her father's fingers twitched, searching for control that no longer existed. She tore open the envelope carefully, revealing notarized letters, financial records, and statements from legal counsel confirming what her grandparents had just said. Every manipulation her parents had attempted was countered, every deceit exposed. The air felt charged with justice, almost electric. Elena looked up, eyes blazing. "So everything you tried to hide, every attempt to redirect what was rightfully mine, it was meaningless," she said, voice calm but edged with authority. "Because truth has a way of coming to light. And tonight it did." Her mother's face fell, marred by a fleeting flash of regret. "Elena, we thought we were doing what was best." "What was best?" Elena cut in sharply, her voice echoing in the high-ceilinged room. "By hiding things, by favoring Marissa, by assuming I would notice? That's not best. That's selfish. And now, thanks to Grandma and Grandpa, there's no hiding." Marissa looked down, unease radiating from her. "Elena, You don't have to say anything," Elena replied, her voice softer now, tempered by clarity. "You just need to see that fairness isn't something we negotiate. It's something we uphold. And tonight, that's what happened." Her grandparents stepped closer, the weight of their presence grounding the room. "Elena, we trust you to manage this inheritance wisely," her grandfather said. "Not just for yourself, but for the legacy of this family. We believe in your integrity, your resilience, and your ability to face challenges head-on." Elena nodded, the mix of relief, pride, and empowerment washing over her like sunlight breaking through clouds. She could feel every lesson, every betrayal, every sleepless night culminating in this exact moment. She had faced deceit, manipulation, and favoritism, and emerged not just victorious, but transformed. Her mother slumped back into her chair, finally losing the facade, her shoulders sagging in silent acknowledgement of her daughter's strength. Her father's lips pressed into a thin line, the tension in his body finally releasing, though his pride remained a stubborn ember. Elena turned to her grandparents, eyes glistening. "Thank you for seeing me, for believing in me when I couldn't even fully believe in myself," she whispered. "I won't let you or anyone down. This inheritance, it's more than money. It's responsibility, trust, and a chance to honor those who came before me. And I intend to do just that." Her grandmother smiled softly, brushing a hand across Elena's cheek. "We knew you had it in you," she said. "And now everyone else will too." For the first time in weeks, the tension in the room lifted, replaced with an almost tangible sense of peace and empowerment. Elena looked at her family, at the complex tapestry of relationships that had tested her, and realized something profound. Strength isn't just about winning battles. It's about standing firm when the world tries to bend you, about knowing your worth, and about acting with integrity even when others falter. She folded the documents carefully, placing them in a secure folder. Every piece of evidence, every proof of fairness, now safely in her control. Elena felt a wave of clarity, of purpose. Her journey wasn't just about reclaiming what was rightfully hers. It was about showing that integrity, courage, and resilience could triumph over favoritism and manipulation. Her grandparents' approving nods reinforced her conviction. "Elena," her grandfather said, "this is your moment. Take it, shape it, and lead with your heart." Elena inhaled deeply, letting the weight of that responsibility settle comfortably on her shoulders. She turned to her parents, their expressions a mixture of shock, resignation, and a quiet understanding of their mistakes. "I forgive you," she said finally, "but know this, I will never allow deception to guide our family again." The room was silent, heavy with emotion, yet lightened by resolution. Elena felt a surge of empowerment unlike anything before, a certainty that she could navigate whatever challenges lay ahead. She had faced greed, favoritism, and betrayal, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, and in control. As the evening sun filtered through the windows, casting golden light over the polished hardwood, Elena realized that this inheritance wasn't just a test of wealth, it was a test of character. And she had passed. With one last glance at her family, she felt the power of her journey settle deep within her. She had claimed what was rightfully hers, but more importantly, she had claimed her own strength. And from this day forward, nothing and no one could shake the woman she had become. The chapters of manipulation, jealousy, and secrecy were finally closed. What remained was clarity, empowerment, and the knowledge that standing firm in one's truth was the greatest inheritance of all. The morning after the confrontation felt almost surreal. The house was quiet, save for the faint hum of the heater and the occasional clink of a cup on the kitchen counter. Elena sat at the large oak table, the folder containing all the inheritance documents neatly stacked in front of her, yet her mind was far from the papers. She felt lighter somehow, as if the weight of weeks, of tension, betrayal, and uncertainty had finally lifted. Her grandparents were in the living room, sipping tea and exchanging gentle smiles, their presence a calm reassurance that had always grounded her. "Sleep well?" her grandmother asked, a twinkle of mischief in her eyes. Elena smiled, letting out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "For the first time in weeks, yes. I finally feel at peace." Her grandfather nodded, eyes soft. "Peace comes when you claim your truth, Elena. And you've done that. Now it's time to move forward." She looked out the window at the soft sunlight filtering through the trees, painting the lawn in warm gold. For so long, her focus had been on conflict, on proving herself, on defending her rightful inheritance. But now, she could see beyond it. She could see possibility. She could see choice. Marissa hesitated at the doorway, shifting nervously from foot to foot. Elena gestured for her to come in. "Come on," she said gently. "We don't have to be enemies anymore." Marissa's eyes filled with a mixture of relief and remorse. "Elena, I didn't realize. I was just," she trailed off, searching for the words to explain years of misguided assumptions and favoritism. "It's okay," Elena said softly. "You were influenced by others, by your parents' expectations. We all make mistakes. But now, we have a chance to do better." Her parents entered shortly after, their faces subdued, the earlier arrogance replaced with a quiet acknowledgement. Her mother looked at Elena, then at the folder on the table. "I see now. I see what we were missing," she admitted. "And I'm sorry." Elena nodded. "Apologies matter, but actions matter more. I hope going forward, we can act with honesty and fairness. That's the only way this family survives, together, not divided." The tension in the room softened. It wasn't perfect, and the scars of manipulation and favoritism weren't erased overnight, but there was a sense of beginning, a fragile but real hope that the family could rebuild, stronger and more truthful. Elena rose from the table, feeling the weight of her journey settle comfortably on her shoulders. She walked over to her grandparents, taking both their hands in hers. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me, for guiding me when I couldn't see my own strength. I wouldn't have done this without you." Her grandmother's eyes glistened with pride. "You've always had it in you, Elena. We just helped you see it." Her grandfather smiled, a rare softness in his gaze. "Remember this feeling, Elena. The strength you found here today, it's yours to carry forward. Not just with this inheritance, but with everything you do." Elena looked around the room, at her parents, at Marissa, at the people who had shaped her life in both good and painful ways, and realized how much she had grown. She had faced greed, favoritism, and betrayal, and come through stronger, clearer, and more grounded in her own values. She had discovered not only her right to what was hers, but also her capacity to lead with integrity, patience, and compassion. Later that day, she walked outside into the crisp air, feeling the sun warm her face. She inhaled deeply, savoring the freedom and clarity that had been hard-won. The challenges of the past weeks had been immense, but they had also been a catalyst, revealing the resilience and decisiveness she hadn't fully trusted in herself. As she glanced back at the house, she felt a sense of completion. The inheritance was more than money. It was a testament to her perseverance, her moral compass, and the lessons she had embraced. But even more than that, it was a symbol of her empowerment, proof that standing firm in one's truth could reshape even the most complex and manipulative of situations. Elena knew there would be challenges ahead. Family dynamics are never simple, and trust must be rebuilt with time. Yet, she also knew that she now possessed the clarity and courage to navigate whatever came next. She would act with integrity, lead with empathy, and never allow deception to dictate her life again. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lawn, Elena allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. She had faced manipulation, favoritism, and the shadows of family expectation, and she had emerged victorious. Not because she had fought alone, but because she had embraced her own power, her voice, and her right to claim what was fair. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the people she loved and those she had learned to forgive, Elena understood a truth more valuable than any inheritance. The greatest legacy one can leave, or inherit, is the courage to stand for oneself and the wisdom to act with honesty and strength. She turned back toward the house, ready to begin a new chapter. One where fairness, love, and empowerment guided her choices, and where the past's shadows could no longer dictate her future. Elena was finally free, and stronger than she had ever been. And, before we end today's story, let me leave you with this. Women like her, like all of us, don't become strong by accident. We become strong because life gives us moments that test us, break us, shape us, and force us to choose ourselves. Every betrayal, every manipulation, every moment where someone tries to dim your light is also a moment where you get to decide how brightly you rise afterward. Remember this: You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to walk away from people who take more than they give. And most importantly, you are allowed to rebuild your life in a way that honors your worth. Stories like these aren't just entertainment. They're reminders that women can be quiet, but powerful, gentle, but unbreakable, hurt, but never defeated. So if you needed a sign today, you're stronger than the moment you're in. You're wiser than the people who tried to fool you. And you deserve a life where your peace is non-negotiable. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Voice of Jenna so you never miss the next chapter in our world of twists, lessons, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world to me, and trust me, the stories only get better from here.